Should be going now. 3, 2, 1, there we go. Alright, hey everybody, we're back on Foundations tonight. It's going to be Genesis 16 and 17. I got to adjust my camera a little bit. If you didn't get to see the last video, tonight we'll be discussing Genesis 16 and 17. We're on day 10, so congratulations. If you've been following along with this study, then you've made it 10 days already, and you've hopefully grown and learned some things throughout Genesis and through Job. I'm having some technical difficulties for some reason. If you're not able to find it. Just ignore it. That's the school system calling again. They pick the worst times to call. Alright, Malia's on. So it must be working if Malia's able. Malia, if you can, put in the comments whether or not you can see the screen or not. If the picture's working. You should be able to see Brittany's head poking in the corner of it.
I don't see it either.
Yeah, Kimberly's having trouble getting on too. Apparently we've got the chat, but we don't have any. Trying to get everybody on here. Malia, can you see me on your screen? Do you see the video? And Kimberly also comment if you can see me on your screen now. Brittany, you may need to update or refresh your screen if you still don't have it. I'm going to change this to watch view and make sure to show me what everybody else is seeing. Alright, there we go. I had to mute my volume or we don't get feedback, but it is hanging up. Alright, everybody can see me now. Mine's hanging up. I don't know what's going on now. I don't know if it's internet connection or not, but I'll try to go through this. Let me know if it's lagging on you like it is on me. My watch screen's terrible. I'll just reset it to see if maybe that'll help. If I get me back on. There we go. I can see me moving now. But it's delayed. There's Brittany's head. So it looks like it's pretty delayed, but it's working now. So that's good. Let me test my chat. Right, there we go. All that moving around kind of gave me motion sickness. Alright, so we're going to be in, and also put in here if you can hear me, because I can't hear myself for some reason. I used to be able to hear myself in my mic, but I can't hear myself in my mic. So if you can hear me, let me know. Alright, so let's get started. If you did your journal, go ahead and post in the comments what scripture it was. I know some people I've already spoke to weren't able to get theirs done, and that's fine if you weren't able to get it done. We'll talk about what we have. We'll go over what I have for mine. But if you did and were able to complete your journal, or you got started on your journal, go ahead and post in the comment what verse you chose. It could have been either 16 or 17. But it can either be in chapter 16 or chapter 17 of the two. So if you have one, post it in there for us. I'm going to read a little bit while you're doing that and let you know what the book has, the intro to the book for chapter 16 and 17. It says, in Genesis 16, the focus shifts from Abraham's wife, Sarai, from Abram, to his wife Sarai. All they knew of God's promise was that they would have an heir. So Sarai took the initiative to provide that heir herself by using Hagar, her servant, as a surrogate mother. Sarai's action revealed a lack of trust in God's ability to provide. God alone was the engineer of Abram and Sarai's destiny, and their attempts to go about it without God paled in comparison to the grandeur of his plan. Once more, Genesis 17, God reminded Abram that he would be the one to bless them. He would give them the promise of their son Isaac, and he would make the descendants as numerous as the stars. He would receive all the glory. God's faithfulness and ability to do what he says overcomes all of our flaws and uncertainties. And it's a good thing to remember, too, when we're reading this and read about Abraham, not to put Abraham on too high of a pedestal or any of the people in the Bible except for Jesus on a pedestal, because they're all humans, and sometimes we forget that. But we'll see as we go on and study Abraham, that Abraham was a flawed character. Abraham had some issues that he had to work on, and so he's not perfect. So don't think that to be used by God that you have to be perfect, because as you see as we study the Bible, we'll see it everyone that God uses is imperfect. All right, so in mine, I did Genesis 17:9, and it says, God said no, but Sarah your wife shall bear you a son, and you shall call his name Isaac. So the background of this on my E for explain, it's God's reminding Abraham of the promise that he gave him back in chapter 15. If you are able to read chapter 15, we talked about the promise, or if you're able to do the video either, we talked about the promise that God had given Abraham, and he took him outside and he showed him the stars, and he said, I'm going to give you this many descendants. You're going to have so many that you can't even count. And it said that Abraham believed him in faith. And we talked a little bit on Wednesday night about how right directly after that, Abraham failed to believe God, because God said, I'm going to give you the land also. I'm going to give the land to your people, and you guys are going to inherit this land. And then Abraham asked, well, how do I know that you're telling the truth? How do I know that you're going to do this? So oftentimes, just like us, Abraham's human, and his faith is fleeting. But thank goodness God's faith isn't like ours, that God's faith is always continual. See you later, Malia. I read it. I'm a little behind on reading the comments, but thanks for tuning in. Alright, so on my explanation, God reminds Abraham of the promise that he gave in chapter 15. Abraham had a son called Ishmael from his failed plan to speed up God's promise. And because of his lack of faith, that he would have a child at 99 years old, he offered Ishmael to God to be his heir. So God said no, though. He said, you and Sarah will have a son, and he will be named Isaac. So what it was is Sarah got tired of waiting on God. And Abraham, I'm sure, was frustrated as well. So she devised a plan that she was going to have her maidservant have an affair with Abraham and produce a child, because she was acting on her own will. She wanted to move along the promise that God had made for her, but God moves in his own time and in his perfect timing, and God wasn't ready to move yet. So I don't know if you noticed or not, but between chapter 16 and 17, there is a 13-year gap that gives in the age of Abraham in 16, and it gives it again in 17. So after he had this child, there's an age gap between Isaac and his brother of somewhere around 13 years. So he already had this boy. When God comes to him this time, he already has a son, Ishmael. And he was like, can we not just use this son, God? I mean, me and Sarah already have this son. We have a child. And can't you just use this? Can't you use Ishmael? And God says, no, I'm not using Ishmael. I have a plan. I'm going to give you an heir. And it's going to be an heir from you and Sarah, not an heir. And this is all my version of what's happened, just a nutshell version of what happened in the 2 chapters. I'm going to be the one who blesses you. But Abraham's 99 years old by this point. So Abraham doesn't have faith in God like he had when 13 years ago, whenever God told him, I'm going to give you an heir. he had lost sight that God does what God does in His own timing, and so he wanted what he wanted right then. But Abraham didn't have the faith that he could produce a son, and so it's like, can't we just do Ishmael? Can he be my heir? And God says no, he can't. But if you notice when the name, I don't know if you have a study Bible or not, but the name of Isaac is as he laughed. That's what it means. It means he laughed. And that's exactly what Abraham did. Whenever he found him and Sarah both, when they found out they were going to have a son at their age, they laughed. They didn't believe God. And I thought that was interesting, is that is what God gave them to name their son. He said, this is what you're going to name him. Abraham didn't choose the name on his own. It was given to him. So when you read this, there's some things that are new in this chapter. There's some things as far as covenants. We spoke a little bit about covenants and how on the last video about how God put Abram to sleep, and then he did a covenant with Abram, but Abram was asleep and God did all the work. Abraham didn't walk through the split animals because it was to show that it was all on God. The covenant was all on God. But this time around, there is action that's required of Abram. And so he wants him to circumcise himself and circumcise all his heirs and circumcise all of the slaves or servants that he has. All the servants that he has in his family. Everybody that he has bought, everybody that, excuse me, that is related to him has to go through this as a sign of a covenant with God. Alright, so for my apply, I have I have been in Abraham's position before. I've doubted God's plan, and I thought it was laughable. But what is impossible for man is possible for God. God is ready to fulfill the promise that He has made years before to Abraham. It's time for Him to move forward and initiate this promise that Abraham's been waiting for so long, and has pretty much given up on. For my R, the acronym R for response, I have thank God for your faithfulness. Thank you, God, for your faithfulness. It's not based on my faith, but it's based on the promise that you will do what you have promised. Isaac is the beginning of the future. He's fulfilling his promise to Abraham, and he's also fulfilling the promise of salvation, because there's going to be kings coming down this line, and Christ the Messiah also comes down from this action that he fulfills with Abraham. So by blessing Abraham, He's going to bless us also. We had a great discussion last night about how Gentiles fit into this and how Gentiles are adopted in. We spoke on adoption last night, which is really good. I had a really good time doing that. All right, so Brittany chose her scripture for this week, or for these two chapters is 16:2. Let me open up. I closed my Bible. Let me get to 16:2, so we'll all be on the same page. And if you are at home and you have your Bible, go ahead and open it up to Genesis 16:2, so you can follow along with the discussion. If anybody else is on here, I know Malia got off. If anybody else is watching, go ahead and post in the comments. That way I'll know who's on here and who's not, if I can refer to you or talk to you while we're going through here. Alright, so chapter 16. Alright, 16:2. It says, And Sarai said to Abram, Behold now, the Lord has prevented me from bearing children. Go into my servant. It may be that I shall obtain children by her. And Abram listened to the voice of Sarai. So Sarah said, God's not going to do what God said that He's going to do. I want you to take my maidservant and have a child from my maidservant as a surrogate mother. Alright, so Brittany's explanation that she has on this is Sarai is telling Abram to go and have a child with her slave, and Abram agrees, just like Adam and Eve. That's a good comparison, is that Adam and Eve. That's a good picture to refer back to, because if you remember when Eve came to Adam, Adam should have said no. Adam should have said, "We're not doing that." God said no when Eve offered him the forbidden fruit, but he didn't. Same thing here. When Sarai came to Abraham and devised this plan of how they were going to have a child and how they were going to go ahead and do it their own way, Abraham should have said no, but he didn't. He went ahead along with the plan, and the plan backfires. If you read a little further in the chapter, it backfires on him. And so, once Hagar has a child, she starts turning on Sarah. She doesn't like Sarah anymore, and they have a complete falling out. Just a terrible result. The sin that was committed by Abram, committed by all three parties, backfired, and it turned out negative. Something that they thought was going to be good. They thought they were going to go ahead and do it their way, and God was just going to bless it, and everything was going to be okay. They didn't consult God. It doesn't mention anything about them praying to God or anything or talking to Him about it. But it looks like they were just going to take it into their own hands. All right, so and Brittany has put in here, she said on her application that Sarai is telling Abraham to do wrong, and Abraham agreed, and even knowing that it was wrong, he did it anyways. And her response is, God, let me make right choices and do right things. And for us to have faith when we know that something is wrong, and we know that God has promised us something, to be patient. Yeah, it's a really long time to wait on God. He'd been waiting 13 years for this son that he had been promised. Yeah, if not longer. It may have even been a longer period of time, but it was at least 13 years between 16 and 17, and he still hadn't got his heir yet. But God's ready to move. He's ready to move forward, and we're going to see that in the upcoming chapters. If you don't already know what you're going to be reading on or what we're going to be discussing tomorrow, it is going to be Genesis 18 and 19. So we're going to move forward into that and see how this progresses, how God moves forward with His promise and reaffirms His promise. If you have any questions, if anybody else is on here and they have a verse that they chose that they want to discuss, I'll give you wait a couple minutes for the comments and post it in there. And if not, then we'll go ahead and end for this evening. But I'm glad that you guys are keeping up and watching this. I'm excited about you younger guys, younger people learning how to read the Bible and how to ask good questions and starting to see connections between one book and another book. You're starting to see, connections that happened in Job and connections that happened in Genesis. But also, when we talked this week in class, we were able to tie in Romans, how Paul talks about a lot of this stuff that we're reading about in Genesis. Paul refers to it in Romans and talks about it. So the whole, a lot of the adoption is explained better if you go in and you read the New Testament of Romans. It gives you a better explanation of how everything meshes together and how we, as Gentiles, relate to this story. Because Genesis, the story of Genesis and in Job in the Old Testament, it's not only for Hebrews. It's not only for Jewish people. It's for all people and all believers. All right. Well, it looks like I don't have any more comments coming in, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the feed tonight. Try to get your reading and journals done before tomorrow, and then we'll have a break this weekend. But I hope everybody's doing well, and I just want to encourage you to keep on doing your reading. I can see some of you guys are really learning a lot. You may not feel like it, but I can tell in conversation that you're learning a lot from this stuff. You're learning a lot from reading the Word of God. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and sign off, and you guys have a good night.